Due to economic concerns, after the city of Detroit proclaimed it would eventually stop selling water to Flint, the town decided to save money while a pipeline to the Lake Huron was being built by just using Flint River water.
However, this had negative implications upon the people. The water was discolored and infested with bacteria and poisons like lead, and this resulted in sickness and distress among the Flint people, even causing cognitive damage in children and kidney issues in adults.
Ultimately, the graveness of the situation resulted in political involvement by President Obama to help alleviate the situation.
Now let's go to an exclusive video from a resident of Flint.
I am a citizen of Flint, Michigan, and this is water I collected from my faucet at home. Let me show you as I try to drink it now. That is unacceptable. We should not be subjected to drinking water like this. Something has to be done.
Now let's go to a timeline of events that occurred in Flint, Michigan.
On April 25, 2014, the city began using water from the Flint River as a stopgap until the pipeline from Lake Huron could be completed.
On August 15th, a boil advisory for part of the city was issued after water tested positive for E. coli bacteria.
On January 4, 2015, the city announced that Flint's water contained such a high level of trihalomethanes, a disinfectant byproduct, that was in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act. Officials said residents with normal immune systems had nothing to worry about. Is water from the Flint River safe to drink? Yes, a city website declared.
On October 1st, state officials announced that a new analysis of their data showed Hannah Atisha was correct. More children had lead in their blood since the water switch.
On October 2nd, Governor Snyder announced that the state would buy water filters and test lead in schools. Within a week, he recommended that Flint start using water from Detroit, and $6 million to help the city switch back was eventually approved.
On October 16th, Flint switched back to Detroit water.
On January 5, 2016, Snyder declared a state of emergency in Flint. The Department of Justice opened an investigation on the matter.
On January 12th, under increasing fire, Governor Snyder called out the National Guard to distribute bottled water and filters in Flint.
On January 13th, the crisis expanded to include Legionnaire's disease, as officials revealed a spike in cases, including 10 deaths, after the city started using river water.
On January 16th, President Barack Obama signed an emergency declaration and ordered federal aid for Flint 2 days after a request from Snyder.
Wait, does this remind you of anything?
You know, when I think of the state of emergency declared in Flint, I find it really similar to the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. In both cases, the government took a while to take action and respond. During the Great Depression, the government's use of isolationist policies only made the matter worse. When FDR finally took office in 1933, almost 4 years later, changes were finally made to help the American economy. For not realizing how critical the problem was in Michigan. They also were very slow to take action to protect the health of Americans. Elevated levels of lead was found in the blood of children, but not much was done to help. Finally, the National Administration and Obama have taken action to make changes.
The Hillary Clinton email scandal controversy surrounds government officials' and unwillingness to be honest with the American people.
Choosing to use a private email creates a space where a Secretary of State is not being upfront with all her work and not abiding by U.S. guidelines.
It also puts national security at risk by not being monitored under a secure network.
Technological issue was also combated using technology, as the FBI was able to recover lost emails and publish most of them for the American public. 22 were still deemed as containing top-secret information.
This scandal also brings up past dealings regarding the September 11, 2012 Benghazi attack on the U.S. Embassy and CIA annex in Libya.
Secretary Clinton and Obama blamed extremists and terrorists using an anti-Muslim video as the basis for the attacks.
However, new information regarding Secretary Clinton's emails revealed that she sent an email to Egyptian Prime Minister Kandil saying, "We know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest."
Let's go to an exclusive video from a citizen of the United States.
I feel betrayed by my country. People like us are what make up America. We spend our days working and even sacrifice our lives to better this country, and we ask nothing in return but the truth. And yet, they blatantly lie to our faces. Even if they made a mistake, they should have been honest and asked for the people's forgiveness and understanding in these hard times. I don't know when I'll be able to trust the government to protect us again.
Wait, does this remind you of anything?
Hillary Clinton's scandal really relates to Richard Nixon's Watergate scandal. The Watergate scandal was Nixon's attempt to cover up the fact that he was connected to the burglars' attempt to wiretap phones and steal secret documents from the office of the Democratic National Committee. He raised money to quiet the burglars, tried to stop the FBI from investigating, destroyed evidence, and fired uncooperative members. Clinton's scandal began with her using her personal email for official communications rather than using this official State Department email. The official communications included thousands of emails that were marked classified by the State Department. When she deleted almost 32,000 emails that she and her lawyer viewed as private, she violated State Department protocols and procedures along with federal laws and regulations governing record keeping. Recently, the Judicial Watch has released new emails that contradict her statements that she released all her emails to the State Department and that she hasn't used her new Clinton email until March 18, 2009.
Hillary's email scandal has had little to no negative influence on her presidential campaign.
Culturally, the Oscars is a significant and highly anticipated event in the American entertainment industry.
Historically, the proportion of minorities in the entertainment industry hasn't been representative of their existing proportion in the American population.
Even so, the roles that they do take are often mocking or stereotyping the race of the minorities.
The boycott by the African Americans demonstrates the racial tensions that still exist within this specific industry and society as a whole.
And now let's hear from a few celebrities regarding this issue.
Jada Pinkett Smith said, "I can't help but ask the question, is it time that people of color recognize how much power and influence that we have amassed? We no longer need to ask to be invited anywhere. The Academy has the right to acknowledge whoever they choose, to invite whoever they choose. And now I think it's our responsibility now to make the change."
Janet Hubert said, "First of all, Miss Thing, does your man not have a mouth of his own with which to speak? Second thing, girlfriend, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that you all don't seem to recognize. People are dying, our boys are being shot left and right, people are hungry, people are starving, people are trying to pay bills, and you're talking about some actors and Oscars? It just ain't that deep."
Idris Elba said, "The reason I went to America is because the USA has the most famous diversity policy of all, and it's called American Dream. The problem is the gap between the dream and the reality. To champion diversity is to champion the American dream. That's a guarantee I want here in Britain. Where's the British dream?"
Whoopi Goldberg said, "You want to boycott something? Don't go to see the movies that don't have your representation. That's the boycott you want. To me, we have this conversation every year. It pisses me off."
David Oyelowo said, "For 20 opportunities to celebrate actors of color, actresses of color, to be missed last year is one thing. For that to happen again this year is unforgivable."
George Clooney said, "If you think back 10 years ago, the Academy was doing a better job. Think about how many more African Americans were nominated. I would also make the argument, I don't think it's a problem of who you're picking as much as it is. How many options are available to minorities in film, particularly in quality films?"
Wait, does this remind you of anything?
The Oscars boycott reminds me of another boycott on the idea of racism, one that many of us are familiar with, the Montgomery bus boycott. In both cases, the African Americans were boycotting something that they were being ostracized from. In the bus boycott, Rosa Parks was being fined for not giving up her seat to a white man. While this event was staged, this sparked the boycott of public buses for blacks. The Oscars boycott was about every single nominee for acting being white for 2 years in a row. Both cases demonstrate discrimination and prejudice against the black community. Because this boycott was so controversial, even on the end of African Americans, especially African Americans in the entertaining industry, there were various perspectives from different people with different follower demographics. That to a certain degree reflects the divide between African Americans with different perspectives about racism and how to go about combating it during the civil rights movement in the 1960s.
Now let's go to an exclusive interview about racism and discrimination in America. In what part of New York did you live, and who were the majority and minority populations?
I first lived in Brooklyn for 6 months, and then we moved to Queens, is basically where I grew up, and I lived there for about 20 years. The majority of the people in Brooklyn, it was more basically Caucasian people, There was some Jewish population nearby. The school that I went to was predominantly Caucasian. And in Queens, also at that time, you could have gone really anywhere. I think perhaps not Bronx. It was really predominantly Caucasian. There were a handful of African Americans and maybe a handful of all the other minorities. Not even much of Hispanics at that time.
In what ways were you discriminated against?
In school, not everyone obviously did it, but I did feel like my third grade teacher, since I didn't speak any English, they just put me for ESL class. And in that class, ESL, the only language other they thought that anybody could ever speak besides English was Spanish. So the teacher was bilingual in Spanish and English. So that's the only thing. She gave instructions in Spanish to us. And that was for the benefit of all the other kids. Maybe there were like 12 kids total. That included all grades, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And so I didn't understand the Spanish instructions or the English instructions. Discriminated even from the kids. Also, there was this boy who used to kick me in my tummy, and I was so afraid to tell the teacher. But once I did see the teacher saw that he did it, and the teacher didn't do anything about it. He didn't come up to me, or he didn't stop what he saw, or he never confronted the boy even. So that was in Brooklyn. In Queens, it was less of physical, but they used to call it Hindu, like as if it was a curse. It was just to humiliate. At first, I didn't think it was anything bad because I thought, yeah, that's what I am. But then when I understood a little bit more, as I gained a little bit more of English, I saw that they were making fun of me.
Did you feel this discrimination in college also and in the workplace?
At college, I did not feel any discrimination, not even from the professors. And at that time, it was the late 80s, so I feel like there were a lot more minorities also in this country, and especially I went to school in New York City, so just a melting pot. So I have to say the college experience was really good. In the workplace, I worked for a federal government where they were looking for minorities, actually. So especially I was a minority and a woman, and I worked for the FDIC, where at that time predominantly it was a male, white-dominated workplace. I did not feel discriminated against from my coworkers, but certainly when I actually went out to banks, which you could say are clients, they did, because the banking world was also predominantly male, white, old boys school kind of environment. So they definitely looked at you and kind of discounted you. Well, 3 factors I would say. One was because of my ethnic makeup, and second, because I was a woman. They did that to other women too. And third, because of my age. When I started working, I was like 22 and I looked very young. So you're talking to board of directors, you're talking to presidents of the banks, and they're like, you just started, you don't know what you're talking about.
Why do you think people discriminate?
Ignorance. When I first came to this country, a lot of people had not seen anyone wear sari. When my mom would come to the school, they were just like shocked. They had never seen any other attire besides the Western attire. We never learned anything besides the American history. When I came to high school, I learned a little bit about European history. And that was, not Eastern European countries, but mainly, starting from Great Britain, Paris and Rome. All that. I see a big difference now, and I think so it's the education. So I would definitely have to say ignorance.
What is your perspective on the role of minorities in general in media and entertainment?
I think they're underrepresented. And also I feel like in entertainment, they still don't get the mainstream roles. There's not enough roles written for them, like from Asians especially. What I see is that they mock roles that are there are to be played as a typical person, just, you know, a fob, fresh off the boat kind of person. They're not representing the second generation that lives here right now. So I don't think it's very representative of the makeup of where we live.
What is your perspective on the Oscar boycott?
I'd say that I don't know how to feel about it. I understand where they're coming from, where they felt like, how come no African American was, you know, nominated? But they haven't nominated in the past. It was just this year. Like I said earlier, there's not that many roles that are out there. There's not many African Americans relative to the Caucasian population. So I didn't feel as strongly that it was discrimination, but I'm not against them boycotting it either. I think that's their right, and it's kind of nice to see that they united together and they felt, whether it's right or wrong, that there was discrimination or not, but they felt something and they united together to make a statement, which I think all minorities should learn. As far as the discrimination, I'm not 100% convinced that there was discrimination. Maybe they just didn't get voted this time. I think in the past there have been nominations and awards awarded.
Do you think times have changed much since you were growing up?
Oh yes, for the better, for the most part. Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot more education regarding us, more like a global kind of perspective that the school system is trying to give to our children. Yeah, I think in the school system also they teach other country histories, not only history but current events, which I was very impressed with when the kids learned about. I think for the most part there's been improvement. I can't say that it's everywhere. You always hear in the news every now and then how African Americans are beaten up, you know, picked on by the police, how Indian Sikhs are physically violated. I feel that there has been improvement in the discrimination. I feel it's more subtle now as opposed to before, and in general there's improvement. I feel more welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.